I'm Becky.
And I'm Lindsay.
And we finally hit record on our candid conversations around conscious parenting.
We're here to talk about all of it.
Ugly parts included.
And share our raw experiences and imperfect insights as we're doing parenting.
Pretty conscious.
In this episode, we're talking about finding clarity in those moments where we're needing to bring limits in closer, while being mindful to not move into overbearing power over parenting. For context, this conversation is between two people who strive for mutually empowering and non-coercive parenting as much as possible. Because of the potential for harm in powering over, we don't take it lightly when we need to move into benevolent leadership as parents. If you want to skip trinkets, start at 9:54. All right, let's dive in.
As we do the High School Musical.
I still have never seen the movie.
Gotta do a sleepover one night.
Yes.
But watch all three. I would love Samoa D.
That would be really fun.
Hello.
Hi.
We're here.
Again.
Yay. So before we dive into the episode, let's do trinkets. I can start. So we are recording this shortly after Father's Day. And for Father's Day, my little family went to Sequoia National Park for a camping trip. And this was our first camping trip that we did solo without my sister and her fiance, who have like a converted schoolie. That makes camping a lot easier for us because we just tent and camp next to them, but they have all the things. And so we just sort of like threw it together last minute and went, and I'm so glad we went. But the weekend was, or I guess, the weekend was really hard. Like there was some really tough moments. One being that E was just hungry all weekend. Like we could not feed her enough, and we were very limited in the amount of food that we had because it's all we packed in. And so it was like she just got sick of eating the same, crackers and applesauce and like, the packables that we threw together. And because we were camping in the park, we like couldn't go. There's no place to go there. And just with the like, I'll just say how it felt, the like incessant whining. Tyler and I both kept being like, oh God, is this worth it? Like this feels so hard. Like we really should just turn around and leave. But we really ended up, or I guess I helped him along with it. There was many points where he was like, I'm done, let's just go home. But just really big, like just because we had those hard moments doesn't mean that all of those other moments that felt so good weren't worth it. And that like when it's so easy to get caught up in it's feeling so bad. It's feeling so hard and not easeful. And I feel like especially when you're on vacation or during holidays, like I know that the same feeling comes up for me around different things like that. Yeah. Where it's like, oh gosh, like there should be more ease and more, I guess, happiness is like the thing that I feel like I'm seeking when I'm out. And when that's not the like constant, it feels easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just be like, this whole weekend sucks. But I felt like we were able to really, like, I was able to sort of step back from the like hard moments and be like, okay, this hard moment was here. And there was also so many incredible moments watching my little 4-year-old run around the giantest trees in the whole world that are just too big to imagine and thousands of years old it's magic. And so really being able to like hold both and hold space for both of those things. And I feel like that was going to be the topic of today's conversation, but we're shifting, which we'll get into. But it's something that you and I call the container of now.
Yeah.
And really holding things within that container of now. And I know that that's helped me so much in moments like those this weekend where I just feel like everything sucks to sort of like throw it all away.
Yeah.
And really just be able to savor the moments of like, dang, my kid was so resilient. She hiked 350 steps to the top of Morro Rock, this like huge granite rock that was like pretty scary climb. And it was just, there's so many really cool moments that like when I look back on now, I can delight in. And really finding the space to be able to push through the hard moments in the moment.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and then can totally see how both the container of now, like just, we'll have another episode about it.
Yeah.
But just to give like high level, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's keeping a moment or even a series of moments or a type of moment, but really focusing on just kind of, it's not isolating it, but it's kind of freezing all other priorities and just kind of allowing this moment to be this moment and not bleed into everything else.
Yeah, like you don't have to make it mean something more than it means.
It's allowing this data point to not have to connect to all of the other data points right now.
Yeah.
I think of the container of now happening in those moments where like my kid is saying, I hate you. Or like we're having like a really intense dysregulation moments or whatever. And you just, what we need to do is like be right here, right now, and just allow whatever is happening in this space to happen here and now, and know that we will connect to it at another time.
Yeah.
But this is just held right here. And so it sounds like there were plenty of moments where you were utilizing container of now in those ways.
Yep.
Like not letting it in quotes taint the rest of the weekend.
Yeah.
Right. But also, it also sounds like you've got the container now utilized to really hold a moment and let it expand out into like a glimmer situation.
Yeah.
Hold more gratitude. Just sit with a moment longer.
Stick with it.
Yeah.
Of those like feelings that feel so potent and good.
Yeah. And I think that our brains want so much to connect everything together.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, especially in parenthood, with there being so much nuance and everything, I feel like it just muddies the water so much.
Yeah.
That sometimes I find it very helpful to compartmentalize using the container of now to be like, yep, here were some like contained blobs of challenge moments, but there's also these really beautiful contained blobs of glimmer moments and like holding them in that way. It's a lot like parts work actually.
Yeah.
Like as I think about it. And so like the way that we can hold relationship with them changes, I think, when we look at it that way, rather than having to lump it into one binary. This was either a 0 of a weekend or a 1 of a weekend.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that when we talk about, I just love the word like containment.
Yeah.
It feels so much less scary than everything like oozing out, you know?
Yeah.
That when we can sort of just like contain the moment or whatever, like that just like it feels, and like it's just, it is that moment. And sure, along the way, those like that moment is part of our bigger story.
Right.
But that one moment isn't the whole story. It isn't the whole pie. It's just a slice of the pie.
And container of now is so much holding a boundary with yourself of I'm gonna hold myself to not going to that what if world of what if this lasts forever? What if this scary thing that's happening right now gets bigger and bigger and bigger and follows the trajectory of their life and it just grows with it? Or what if I can't stop doing this thing and showing up this way with my kid, and kind of holding a boundary with ourselves to just let that moment be that moment. And it doesn't mean that we're ignoring it and we're not containing it to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
We're just holding a boundary to deal with what's real right here, right now, in this moment. Yeah.
I know. I feel like that could be,
it is going to be a whole
it is going to be the whole conversation. And so I don't want to go too far into it now, but I think that that's just, a story that feels very real and what I was like planning on coming in with today until, the life happened. And now here we are. So we were talking about when we first started talking about Pretty Conscious and how we wanted the flow of episodes to go, that we have a whole long list of topics and things that we want to cover, that we will cover, but we also talked about how when there is something real and alive for us happening, that we can bring it here and either workshop it or talk about it or share about it. And I think that there's value in that because we're not doing it necessarily from 2020 hindsight. We're doing it from like in the messy bits. We're in the swamp when we're sharing about it. And obviously still using discernment, but so that's sort of what I wanted to bring today. I know I texted you earlier and I was like, this is alive.
Yeah.
We talk about it, and you're like, bring it.
Well, and I love it because it serves we came into Pretty Conscious wanting it to be a capturing of the kinds of conversations we were already having.
Yeah.
And then also, like, obviously with a little more intention and a little discernment required on what things we talk about. But this feels like a real conversation that like having a conversation like this, most of them are rooted in what's going on real in my life right now. And can you help me with the mental load? Can you just hold it with me or talk through different options or whatever?
Yeah, help me find some clarity because when you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah.
So it was something that we started talking about last week.
Yeah.
And it's still very much here. So I will share about it. So I am definitely in one of those level up stages where it's time to sort of look at everything. And I think what has happened is E has leveled up faster than I did. Like now with a little bit of like looking back. So what has happened is we have gotten into some patterns where E has a very strong need for autonomy and agency. Just like blanket always has. And in that, there's been so much beautiful things of me learning to release a lot and to get into negotiations and really collaborate on certain things. And like so far, that's been working really well for us. And right now, it's not that dynamic anymore. And so what has happened is that it feels, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. And I want to just put out in the space sort of like a callback to last episode. The subtext to this all is the like unconditional positive regard for my kid. And so I will say the things that feel real and alive.
Yeah. Understanding it, that's the subtext.
Yes.
And yes, that's the operating
Yes.
undertone.
And that way I can
I know that's there. And so hopefully, just as in our other conversations, but modeling it more explicitly now.
Yeah.
Talk freely.
Yeah.
With what feels real for you and communicate in the words that are alive in you because she's safe at home in bed.
Very true. And yeah, my answer is
I know that what you're speaking to now is a part of how you're feeling on the whole, and that is always present. That the undertone of generous assumptions is always there.
It's been feeling very much like I have been feeling very powerless in parenting, and it feels like I'm handing over too much power to her. And we've gotten into a couple situations that have been really tricky where there's like legitimate safety concerns at play. So I guess I can just give a couple examples and then maybe that'll help me like figure out the best way to summarize this.
Sure.
So there was, and I think I maybe shared about this is in a past episode.
We talked about Oakland there before. Yeah. And then I'm thinking the time at the lake.
At the lake, was one of the other ones. So just quick like recap of the one in Oakland. So we were visiting a friend in Oakland, a big city in the Bay Area. And it was end of a long day. She was wanting to play red light, green light, not wanting to hold her hand on the sidewalk. So we like played red light, green light, thought that I was like in the clear with playfulness. We get back to the car and like she runs further up the sidewalk than the car. And we were in the situation that like one of the dynamics that has been playing out is like I have actually been having to chase her, but she is actually faster than me a lot of the time now, or at least quicker than me. And so it was this situation. I was like, I know I can't chase her because she might run out into the city street. But like, what do I do? I'm waiting her out, trying to figure out like what can I do in that situation. So that's one example. Another example is we went to the lake all together last week, week and a half ago, whenever that was.
Who knows what was time?
Her and I have been talking about like safety agreements. We've been spending a lot more time out in nature. We've been talking about safety agreements and like really trying to like set ourselves up for success. But then we get out there and it's like, it's just testing
Yeah.
is like the feeling.
Yeah.
Is that she's always like pushing the boundary a little bit further. And so at the lake, we got into the situation where we get there and she runs out and around the corner to go explore this rock. And that was further than what our safety agreements were. And I go back and I like can't get her back. So I'm picking her up and I'm carrying her and she's like yelling, you know, no, Mom, one more chance. I promise I'm going to listen. And so then I, you know, put her down and give her one more chance, but then she's not listening. And so we just sort of ended up in this like situation that wasn't safe. And then eventually it ended up happening in the water where she was in the water, like past where I was comfortable.
Yeah.
And as I went out to try to get her, she like started moving further away from me.
Yeah.
And, yeah, like that just felt like a very legitimate safety concern.
Yeah.
That definitely was a bit of a wake up call, I think, to the need to like look at what is going on.
Yeah.
Because it feels like every day I've been managing symptom level stuff.
Yeah.
And almost just like playing whack-a-mole with behaviors.
Dealing with one-offs
Yes.
as they're coming up.
Yeah. And, you know, we've gotten into some of the big behaviors with, you know, like lately she started turning and scratching me and hitting. And like what I was mentioning to you the other day was that I'm having to physically restrain her body to keep her and me and like our possessions like at our house like reasonably safe. And how bad that feels.
Yeah.
To have to physically restrain her. And how I think that, so just for everybody listening, I talked to you about this last week.
Yeah.
And you sort of helped me find some clarity of at least like what was happening.
Yeah.
Because before we were chatting, I was like, her need for autonomy and agency is growing faster than like our trust between us.
Right.
And our ability to stay safe. And so that's what felt like was going on. We're like, oh, I need to give her more. I need to give her more. I need to give her more. But then all I was doing was feeling less and less empowered.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fear of like powering over. And so then I was going to power under.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we talked, you helped me find some clarity in at least like, moonwalking away a little bit to be able to see what is actually going on, what is actually the need there, and what is she needing. I would love to toss it over to you. I feel like I've been talking for a while.
It felt like you really needed to be heard.
Thank you.
And listened to. So I was just here, captive audience, and trying to hold some of my verbal responses because I just want to be aware of like for listening. I have the benefit of listening to all the recordings back. And so I hear us like eagerly trying to actively listen to each other. And a lot of verbal responses where I'm like, oh, and I'm right on top of you. And I'm taking over the sound. And but yeah, attentively listening here. As you talk about power and as I'm hearing it the second time, I'm hearing it in a totally different light. And it's not different than what we were talking about at the beach when we talked about it the first time at the lake. And I think what we kind of arrived at was that essentially, and I'm going to say it in a slightly different way today than I do at the beach.
Love to hear that because it's always helpful to hear it multiple times in different ways.
Yeah. I hear E's need. We've been talking about it as far in regards to E's need for autonomy and her need for agency. And as we talked about it fresh this time, I'm hearing she is sensing her power growing. She is in it, feeling how powerful she has become. And in your efforts to give her more agency and more autonomy, and you talked about how you're giving away your power. Essentially, you're feeling more and more powerless and you're powering under. And when we think of our kids, and what I mentioned at the lake was, I think sometimes, especially in those moments where they can feel their power growing, they need to feel that our power is still big enough to keep them safe in it.
Yeah.
And they need to feel more of our sturdiness as they're playing in this new area, in this new territory of how strong they're becoming and how much power they actually do have in different scenarios. They need to like feel those walls to feel safe and continuing to explore there, right? And how, we talk about this with, like, I've got my whole chart. We'll put that in the show notes.
Cool.
The power and safety.
Oh, yes.
Quadrants situation. Like, it's actually can be terrifying for kids to feel like they have so much power, right?
Yeah.
It's a fine line, right? And so we talked about how, maybe bringing in through that benevolent leadership kind of action and tying it into the family values that we know we're going to prioritize body safety over autonomy needs, right? And so acting from that place and coming in, and we talked about maybe coming in a little earlier, because the amount of power and the way that she's demonstrating, and she's trying to really utilize the power that she has. We talked about identifying, like, at what point does she move into dysregulation with that? At what point is it like a little freaky, and so she like starts going offline in ways, right? In ways that don't prioritize connection. And I think that would be another, having more time and space from it and like having it simmering for a while. I think that would be a great place to look for a marker. This is sounding very advicey, so
I'm open to it. Yeah.
Okay. But I think that would be a great place to utilize as a marker for when she's moving into dysregulations. Like, as soon as she's out of cooperation, she's into dysregulation. And so that's the point to bring it back and to like help settle, establish firmer boundaries that she can then play more freely within.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what I look at it as, like, we're going from a large net to like a hula hoop, and you can still play with all of this autonomy, but I'm going to bring in the net a little bit so that you can continue to explore all of the power that you have in here.
Yeah. I think that definitely, that's definitely the marker, is when, like, that's the early marker.
Yeah.
Is when she moves out of cooperation and collaboration. Like, when I see that we are not connected, like the eye contact isn't there. Like, there's not that like softness behind the eyes, and a little bit more of like the pulling away, but not in a way that is, it feels different than Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it feels different than like her other needs for autonomy, but there's like definitely a dysregulation component there. And it looks different than dysregulation has in the past.
Yeah.
Where in the past it felt much more like clear cut of like,
Right.
oh, she's having a like quote unquote tantrum or meltdown. And so
Yeah.
like it felt easy to step in as benevolent leader in those
Yeah.
moments. And in these moments, it's been a lot harder to recognize that that's
Yeah.
what she has needed. And since we've chatted, I've definitely been doing that a lot more. Like that helped me find so much clarity. And
Yeah.
I've started to see her like be able to rest a little bit in it.
Yeah.
But we're still very deep in the it's really hard
Yeah.
as we rebuild that trust or level up the trust that's needed.
And I think that, yeah, as you were talking before, that was coming to mind so much that like it's different than it used to be. Her dysregulation and the way that she was finding soothing is different than it used to be. And it just seems like such a why, like a point in the road. And I feel like this happened with my big Henry around 4 years old too, is that when we get to dysregulation at a certain point, they're going to start seeking safety, not through connection, but through power, through internal power versus connection with you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that some of that is the trust. And I felt that same. I'm very grateful to have felt very similar to how you are feeling right now so that I can like just share with you.
I'm so grateful for it.
And I think
can't even begin to tell you.
And I think what I remember taking time, it was almost like Big Henry needed to learn to trust again that I was going to keep him safe.
Yeah.
And that I was going to prioritize like doing the uncomfortable thing in the moment to set the boundary to help keep him safe, even if it was uncomfortable for him in a moment. And it is so. I hear your like concerns about moving into power over parenting. And sometimes the need looks like, oh, I actually need to come in with more structure. I need to come in with firmer boundaries, clearer boundaries. And that can be totally transparent. Like these can be conversations we're having of, hey, man. Hey, not man.
I call her man, it's fine.
Hey, dude. Hey, teeny dude. We've been having these scenarios. You know, I want to give you as much agency and autonomy and power as you want in a moment. And I need you to know I'm going to keep you safe
First.
and I'm going to prioritize that. And so sometimes I'm going to bring you in when you want to go out. And I want you to know ahead of time that even though in those moments it might not feel good for you, and honestly, it doesn't feel good for me either, I'm going to still do it because I want you to know for sure that you can count on me to keep your body safe.
Yeah.
And to keep, like, you know, coming at it from that, where we're having these really transparent conversations in the connected moments that you are having, so that it's not like, so that it doesn't feel like a threat. You know, like I've really did this with my kids in moments where it's like, we got to get in the car seat. We have to. We have to get in the car seat.
We have to go.
Like, they will give away our doctor's appointment if we don't go now. I don't want to do the way where I have to, like, gently as possible move your body into your seat.
Oh,
I know you hate that way.
Yeah.
I hate that way. Can we please do it another way?
And if not, we will move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they can't access another way, then that's what I needed to do anyways. Then that's what I was going to do anyways.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's the transparency of the communication that helps me feel in integrity with it as I'm bringing those things in a little bit, as I'm pulling everything a little closer to me, and I'm being more in control and in my power
Yeah.
than I have been in the past, or than maybe some people would be comfortable with. But for us, it actually serves our relationship well, and he feels the trust in our relationship when I notice chronic dysregulation. and I respond by pulling things in a little bit. And he can, like you said, like rest in that, like relief of the burden of choice.
Yeah.
In a lot of situations, like sometimes it is that, yeah, relieving you of the burden of choice, because sometimes making those decisions is so stressful. And sometimes wielding that power is so stressful on a little system. And I mean, think of how much it stresses us out to wield our own power.
That's what I was just
And if
about
it
to
feels
say.
like a compulsion for the sake of growth, oh my God, I would really want an opportunity to turn off that switch sometimes. And I do. Like, I think about how I want to celebrate Mother's Day and my birthday and whatever is like, hey, Juan, will you please make all the decisions? Please don't make me decide anything today, please. I would just like to sit. Yep, like a larva.
Yeah, like a potato.
Just let me make like a larva and you just take care of all the things.
Yeah. I think that all it feels like it's bringing me back to the part of the conversation that we had where I was like, I don't even know what's real. And that's the part that I like needed clarity on, because I wasn't sure on, because I was so in it.
Yeah.
It was hard to tell. I think there's fear of power over.
Yeah.
I have this fear of wielding my power as a weapon against my kid and over my kid, because that is there. And like it's there in me, because it
like
was done to
desire
me. Yeah.
Like as a default.
Yes.
The desire to. So this is something you're chronically trying to like
swallow.
Yes.
Yeah. Where I think I'm very sensitive to not wanting to do that. And so needing to do it in a way that feels like empowerment instead of power over.
Yeah.
And like what you were saying is like having the conversation, being super transparent about it. It's not a behavior mod tactic. It's not because it feels good for me to power over you.
Right.
It's truly in service of relationship, safety, growth, your ability to continue to get your needs for autonomy met. Because the reality is you will not be able to get your needs for autonomy met if safety does not exist.
Right. Because the reality is, if that situation at the lake happened more than once, all of a sudden we're not going out to the lake anymore. We're just saying no to the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know? Or, you know, now it's not an option to hold the hand on the way to the car. Which is like, and I think bringing those things into the conversation in a candid way that's not a threat.
Yeah.
And bringing it in and saying, hey, man. Hey, man.
Hey, man.
I really want you to have what you want. I can't. I'm not willing to risk. The risk is too high for us to keep going about it in the way that we have been going about it. So we need to move into making agreements in a way that's actually going to stick. Because I've also, and just calling out that pattern of like, I've also noticed that as we're making agreements, we're finding it really hard to follow through on the agreement.
Yeah, that.
Yeah. But just like we've done, I'll talk about like the journeys.
Yeah.
The journey posters.
Yep.
Because when we run into a situation like this, it's been really helpful for my kids to, after we have this like candid conversation with the challenges that's coming up again and again and again, or something that we need to make progress on for some reason. For us, we've used it with Hottie learning. We've used it for more sleep independence, like getting us like starting off in our own beds or something along those lines. And we just made one recently because we've had relational ruptures again and again and again. And so it's like Big Henry and Mommy's learning journey, right? And so we're taking out a huge poster board and we're co-creating strategies. We're co-creating a protocol Yeah. So we're taking this huge poster board and we're co-creating a protocol to apply in those moments so that we both know what's going on and they have visuals and they're deeply engaged in this process because it's a pathway out of something that is also uncomfortable for them. And that would be my guess, is that it's also not comfortable for E and that she also doesn't like how those scenarios are playing out or feeling.
And she might not, like they don't have the words to say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so helping them make sense of it.
Yeah.
And then, I love the like collaborating on it. I mean, now we've taken the journeys idea from you. I love when I come over and I see a new poster out. Like, the like learning journey. I don't know if you'd be open to share any of yours and we could just like white out the names. And I have one at my house too that maybe in the show notes. I don't know if they feel too personal, but
I'll check in with Big Henry, and if he's open to it, I'll share it.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
And then, I can check in with E. We have one right now for sleep. We had like a big where bedtime was not going well.
Yeah.
And so we we talked about it and collaborated on it, and we came up with like her bedtime journey, and she's excited to do the routine now.
Yeah.
Because she collaborated on it.
And I think that's my kids love when we put together a journey because it helps them to feel empowered in a scenario where they previously felt disempowered. Or moments where I've had to power over, or moments where I didn't step up into benevolent leadership when I really should have. And should have, not because of shame reasons, but because one of our core values was then violated on repeat. Body safety was violated on repeat. You know, protecting each other's work was violated on repeat. And so feel like you can create the journey to be whatever it needs to be, but essentially what you're doing is you're capturing tools that allow and hand over power to your kid without surrendering your own power as if it's transactional, as if only one of you can have it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what happens in those moments, and that what I see is it's those power struggle moments. And so I just feel like it gives you a pathway
to to share it.
Yeah. And we're
and share it
sometimes the protocol is I'm going to power over you because I know that it's too much to count on you to follow through on this every time, on your part of this every time. And so our plan B is like, hey, if then, if we get to this point and you're not able to stop yourself, I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
Early.
Yeah.
Early.
I'm going to help you.
And at least
stop.
pause
I'm going
and
to help you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and that it can include so many different things. And I think that one phrase that I've found really helpful with Big Henry is the empowering him with the request, hey, Mom, can you help me stop? Because I think so much of the time we speak to the desire that is there, and it really sometimes it just comes down to a compulsion. Like, for the sake of learning, I must explore this thing. I must follow the curiosity. And so I think it can be really powerful to, give them the power to say, hey, Mom, I want to stop and I cannot. Please help me.
Yeah. Ugh. And it's such an interesting thing at like 4, 5, 6 years old.
Yeah.
Because they're so capable of so much. And it's hard to remember in those moments that like their prefrontal cortex is barely flickering on, right? The thing that helps them in those moments to make those decisions.
Yeah.
They quite literally don't have access to, especially when we think of like when we put it in the like context of like nervous system and dysregulation. And
one component of it that you were talking about was like, we're waking up this way.
Yeah.
We're waking up in this state.
Yeah. We're in like a chronic dysregulation situation.
And you talked about like her waking up hungry. And that same thing happened with Big Henry at 4, when he was 4.
I remember you texting me about it.
I was like, dude, I have to have a peanut butter bread at the bedside in a plastic bag that I made the night before, because if I do not feed him the moment that his eyes open, he is hurting somebody.
Yeah.
Because he is waking up hot.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, yeah. And so it is, that's like it just screams like chronic dysregulation. We also have the limbic leap that happens around this time. And I think that's, you mentioned that you feel like that's probably part of it, at least.
There's definitely some like different,
There's some
there's just some
cognitive
different
development
things
stuff
going
here.
on.
Yeah.
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 Where we're in some sort of developmental leap for sure. And like I always know that because she'll be like chronically hungry when she's going through some sort of like growth leap. It all like, it's helpful to remember that it all ebbs and flows.
And that's what I was going to say about because your fear of powering over, it's like what you're doing right now is only for now. You can contain it right here and right now. This is what's needed. This is what she's telling you in her own way. That is like counterintuitive. But that's what she needs right now. It does not mean that she will need it forever and that you can expand again when she, you know, as that trust, as you guys level up together. Yeah, there's seasons where you can soften and then reflex with her.
It's reminding me very much of like the circle security in 25 words or less is what they call it. Always be bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. Whenever possible, follow my child's need. Whenever necessary, take charge. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
that's all the clarity I needed. I have all of these tools, and sometimes you just forget where they are.
Totally.
I mean, forget how to use them.
And I think that's the conscious parenting piece of it, is like acknowledging what parts in you need nurturing and tending to be able to do the thing and apply the tool that you already have in your toolbox. But there's barriers there. I was actually just talking to my good friend about the use of psychedelics for learning, or like communing with plant medicines for the sake of therapeutic learning and growth and whatever. And I talked about it in the terms, and this is probably potentially very off, but after talking to people who have gone down that pathway, it seems like a lot of what the experience is it removes the barriers to be able to like be in this really deep and vulnerable place to address like these really challenging parts of you. And for me, I just think about it like some of the most potent experiences and moments of growth for me are when I am encountering the barriers to even accessing that place. And so it's like, it's coming up to the barrier to apply the tool and realizing that within that, as you sit with that and kind of tease apart what all is there, that's where we get to level up. That's where we start building our muscles instead of our calluses of trying to go around the barrier or under the barrier, whatever. No, we get there and we get strong enough to remove the barrier. and then it's actually like handled. And maybe we pop back over on the other side of the barrier, but we know what's here and we know more about what's real and true here. And that's so positive for our relationships. That's the part that feels so good about the hard work that we're doing, because it does ultimately serve the relationship. And for our kids to be able to model, or not model, but witness us in that process of like encountering these hurdles, encountering these barriers, I feel like is so powerful.
Yeah. And being able to talk about it with them too, that like this is our reality. Right? And it doesn't mean that I like see you and what you're going through as bad. It's just what's real here, and we are gonna figure it out. And here's what I'm working with and what I'm doing, and that's the like a barrier like coming up to it. And that's definitely like what it feels like. And I think that one of the things I want to talk about, and I think it's important and I think applies to so many people and is a barrier to conscious parenting in general, or at least utilizing some of the tools of conscious parenting, is capacity. And I bring this up because we've been doing really, we've like her and I, we've been in a pretty good flow with like, I feel like I've been really stepping into like empowered, benevolent leadership in a way that doesn't feel awful and in a way that I can like see her actually resting in it.
Mm-hmm.
And today I hit a wall
Yeah.
and I just didn't have the capacity for it. And I totally went power under.
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, just like there was a moment today where she got upset about something and then was, you know, doing some sort of like, if you don't let me do this, then I'm gonna scratch you or whatever. Ah, I know. Feels so bad. Feels so bad.
The threats and the transactional, it feels so bad.
Yeah.
It feels so bad and it's so normal. And oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole prickly inside.
Mm-hmm. Especially
situation.
when I try so hard as a parent not to do that
Yeah.
transactional, like if I weren't being so intentional about
Yeah.
not doing threats and not having a transactional type situation with her, maybe it wouldn't feel as bad. I don't know, maybe it would. But yeah. Yeah, she threatened me and I just like collapsed basically.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily at that point, Tyler had gotten home and was sort of able to like step in. But up until that point, it was sort of like we were just like symptomatic level dealing with it and just like barely getting through each moment. There was no like massive rupture, but like that whole moment as a whole, looking back upon it, like me not showing up and helping her in that moment and me collapsing like is the rupture. And so like I'm thinking forward to the repair tomorrow that I'm wanting to make.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just all goes back into that explicit conversation, the transparent conversation around all of it, because there's moments too when we are in connection after these tricky moments that she comes and is like, Mom, I don't want to scratch you. Mom, I don't want to hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, I like, it doesn't feel good when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And my heart.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks.
It does. I know. And so, yeah, just being able to like step back from the moment, zoom out a little bit to what is actually happening here.
Yeah.
And we're in it. And I think that it's not just like, oh, I'm gonna like, it's not like, oh, I started showing up as benevolent leader and so now it's all better. No, like it's been a week and a half of me trying to show up like this every day. Yeah. And then today I was back on the other side of that bush. Yeah. But and like we're still very much in it where it's like lots and lots and lots of moments throughout the day. But we actually move all like it feels like we're moving all the way through it. It feels like the like tidal wave actually crashes. Instead of sort of just like staying
right
at the top. Like we need to let the full thing actually come down and crash, and then there's like we're able to like work with what's here. Like she moves through there's like the off-ramp example where like she moves through to tears sometimes. She moves through to the sadness. And back into connection instead of like we move through the moment but we're still not connected.
Well, and I think that there's a component what's coming up for me as you're talking is how sometimes coming in earlier than we could push it further, right? We could, maybe it's like give her more autonomy here, right? But bringing it in closer and like acting sooner and like bringing the limit a little closer to us serves the relationship really well when we're looking at the big picture. If it helps me keep, especially if I'm low capacity, helps me keep in alignment with my do no harm things. Right? Because it doesn't serve the relationship, and it doesn't serve a trust component, which I think what you're talking about now is that like the wave actually crashing is like, because some trust is being rebuilt. And I feel this very much. This is not coming from a
Yeah, no, I know.
This is like from my own experience. It's like, oh yeah, because trust is being rebuilt here. Whereas before it was just like they see I'm just only coping.
Yeah.
And like they feel the uncertainty of that. They feel the at the edge. Yeah, that like frenetic energy of like, oh my God, I'm just trying to get for another Band-Aid on it before another hole pops, whatever. Like they can feel that. And so it sounds like coming in earlier and more often, even though it feels bad or it doesn't like feel like we're offering as much autonomy or flexibility or whatever as we like, I think it's important to have different protocols for different seasons.
Yeah.
When we need to prioritize trust, we bring that in. When it's more important that we have fewer relational ruptures that like really get on top of us, you know, bringing it in. It's the same thing. I've like brought up the example of if the options are between me giving my kids the 5 more minutes they're asking for in the shower, but I already can check in with myself and know that if I go that 5 more minutes, the likelihood that I end up yelling about it and just pulling them out of the thing anyways goes up so much.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's again, it's like, that doesn't feel good. I feel shame talking about that. Like, that's maybe the reality of what's going to happen if I go there. But it's so important to know that that's just the reality of what is. I'm not by any means a perfect human able to regulate myself all the time. And especially in those low capacity moments, it's really good information for me to have if I know that, hey, if I'm already feeling icked out about the water that's on my clothes or like, you know, the splashing that's happening, if I can already feel myself at 80%, I need to just say no to the 5 extra minutes and deal with the rupture now while I still have the capacity that I do, because I can get us through here without doing additional harm because I'm bringing heat into it. Like I can get through this interaction neutrally if I end it now. Versus in 5 minutes when I'm going to end it anyways, and they're still going to be pissed about it, and I'm going to be doing harm. And so now when I go to repair, not only do I have to prepare for like their disappointment of having the shower end or the bath end, now we also have to deal with I did harm on top of that. And so like, and I'm not going to be able to handle that it's as neutrally.
Yeah.
Even that it's so much more loaded. And so I think that there absolutely are moments where it serves the relationship better to come in sooner. And that's ultimately why we don't want to go into power over, because we don't want to damage the relationship.
Yeah.
But if powering under
that
and then
just
exploding,
to,
or trying to power with as long as you possibly can and then exploding, or whatever your version of exploding looks like, that doesn't serve the relationship. So it's like, make it make sense. And sometimes what makes sense for the long term is for the short term temporary and a little bit more, like coming in earlier and more often.
Yeah.
Which is like, but keeping your lens wide enough to know that this is only for now, and that as soon as I have more capacity, we will stretch more.
Yes, like the when I can, I will follow my child's need.
Yeah.
When it's no longer necessary for me to take charge, I will happily release the reins a little bit.
Well, and sometimes it's like because I got too comfortable, and this is the ebb and the flow of the need for the softening and then the rigidity and the softening and the rigidity. It's like, this is why, because at a certain point, the boundaries being in too tight will then cause more dysregulation potentially, right? And so it's again responding to the need and then softening. So, but I think knowing that there's that cyclical nature of it,
so helpful,
and having all of those options on the menu, like these are all things I can do to serve my relationship in whatever way it would serve my relationship with the kids best right now. And knowing that I can flex down the line.
Yeah. I think this is all just like definitely the messy parts, because there is nuance to it, and that's like, I think that so many people in the like gentle parenting space, shy away from talking about this nuanced bit because I think that at least for me, I'll speak for myself and like when, especially when I was, super active on my Instagram, and I was always afraid to share these bits of this, like the times that you would have to take charge or like temporarily power over.
Yeah.
Because I have a fear that parents, and I think this is just a fear of myself that I'm projecting out, a fear that people will hear that and be like, that's like, she said it's okay. Right. And so now I'm back to doing perpetuating the patterns of, things that aren't healthy.
Yeah.
And so sort of talking about this like best practice.
Yeah.
But like that's not what reality is.
Right.
Like I am living in this reality where I've been trying to do the best practice thing and it's not it's not working. It's not serving us. Like it's been rough. And so talking about this like messy, nuanced bit of conscious parenting, I think. Yeah. It is scary. I feel
totally
fear around talking about it, not just with you, but like putting it out there. And just wanting to speak to the nuance of it all.
But I think, as much as we want to offer like unconditional positive regard, I think we can also offer the people who are showing up listening to something like this, I think it's fair to offer them a generous assumption that like, I imagine you also want to do the by the book version.
Totally.
Right? And that you don't want to weaponize something like this.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that, because my logical brain wants to go to like what works, right? And I know that shame does not work. And I know that if we talk about what is happening, if we name it to tame it, if we talk about what is realistically happening in even the folks with the best of intentions homes, most likely, okay, well then we can start to work with that material. We'll say, okay, well, I'm not the only one who's experiencing this. And just like between you and I, how beneficial it's been for you to hear about my messy moments.
Totally.
So that you can apply some of the learnings from it and vice versa. And it's so helpful for me to have people like Alita Blanchard who's out here like sharing her really messy bit.
Yeah.
Because that is what I turn to for resourcing when I need support to be able to regain capacity and recenter and refocus. I need somebody to tell me that, hey, you're not the worst parent in the world because you had a shit day.
Yeah.
We know it sucks. We're not saying like, oh yeah, that's just how like nobody's writing it off. Nobody's like celebrating these moments. I think that's fair to say. Like, I think it's courageous to share about them because it is such a place of like potential for shame. Totally. And I really appreciate when anybody is willing to say that, say the quiet things out loud. So that we can actually like engage with the material. And I know that transformation does not happen from a bed of shame. So
yeah.
Thanks for being brave enough to share it with me, and thanks for receiving when I have to share those things that I'm like crying to you about. Like, oh my God, I never thought
we would get to here, and here we are.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that there is such potential for shame in it all. And like, I mean, even I had that like wave of shame come up as I was sharing the story. And just, oof. Okay. That feels complete for me. It's a work in progress.
Like there's no,
obviously there is no like, and I did
no neat ending.
No. Did we have any questions for the road for folks today?
I think I always wonder, I think it would be really helpful for when we're experiencing this like these kind of moments where we're fearing the power over so much that maybe we're moving into power under, more permissive parenting than is serving us well and serving our relationship well. I'm curious about, for me, where people in adult relationships have held a firmer boundary with me and that's actually increased the safety. I want to think about where it has served my relationship well. And I'm thinking of it right now. I'm thinking so many of my relationships have been improved, especially like complicated interpersonal, maybe familial relationships have been really improved when I started setting boundaries. Because now there's safety here.
Yeah.
Now you know what I will and will not, like how I will respond, and now I know how I will respond.
Yeah, there's like the
If
personal
XYZ is
accountability
going on.
bit when you put it out there and set it.
Yeah. And to be on the receiving end, I am always so grateful when somebody shares a boundary with me, because then I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy to respect your boundary. And obviously that's not the energy that kids are going to be necessarily bringing to the table all the time, right? Because that's not their job
No.
in childhood. But I absolutely, as a just like thinking that, absolutely feel the safety of boundaries in my adult life. So
Even when they feel like to receive.
right.
Like sometimes when somebody, like I think of that yes, there is absolutely, and I know that like we've practiced this back and forth in our friendship.
So scary, so cool, so
So, yeah. And like I'll get the text, it's like, and then it's like, okay, wait, no, but this actually improves safety so much. And I like, there is rest after that initial,
yeah,
and that's exactly what our kids are experiencing.
yeah.
Yeah, I think thinking of those experiences in your own life where boundaries have maybe allowed you to rest a little bit.
Yeah, because I actually don't feel it's how we talk about like people pleasers, not realizing that the people who are in relationship with people pleasers actually don't trust them. Because I can't believe you. I only can trust that you're going to say whatever you think I want to hear. I can't trust if it's real or not.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's absolutely one of those things where it's like, well, at least I know it's real here. I know
That's
what's
good
true
information
here.
for me to know.
Yeah.
Go back to that trinket.
Yeah, such a good one.
The only other question for the road that I would think of, just because I love having things to reflect on that help me build awareness, because then I feel like I can go somewhere from there. So
You like the good tangible.
I do like the good tangible
Which I
takeaways. We make a good team.
Yes.
Is what are, and it's similar to last week, what are your markers for when you need to take charge? Like, what are your kids' markers for when you need to take charge?
Yeah.
And yeah, just,
And I think both of us responding to that, because this one I feel like is on hard mode.
yes.
Like I miss some of the signs from my kids that like chronic dysregulation. And I will say that. I think that what are your kids' signs of chronic dysregulation? Because I think that those usually are signs that we need more structure or more like
Yeah.
more of a, I'm imagining like a bra, like a very supportive underwire.
More supportive bra.
Yeah.
Our kids
Contain
are
everything
eating.
a little more. Yep.
No, I just imagine like a smaller Tupperware container.
Yeah. I just
gotta
keep doing
pour it
this
into
with my hands. You can't see it.
Here's
unless
the
you're
bowl.
watching, but just like,
Yeah. Well, and even because I'm thinking back to like past experiences when E was a little bit younger, and there was times when I was like needing to step in with benevolent leadership, and it felt, at least for me in those moments, felt more clear cut.
yeah.
Those markers were easier for me to see.
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily driven by chronic dysregulation. So even if like your kid is not experiencing chronic dysregulation, I think it still is like a good thing to look at. But absolutely, when there's chronic dysregulation going on, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And can you start to see a connection between that and the need for us to take charge a little bit more, step in as benevolent leader?
Yeah. And I think this whole episode, and maybe I'll put in a note at the front end, I I think this whole episode is very applicable if you find yourself in the position where you are nervous to power over.
Yes.
Not if you are already powering over, because chronic dysregulation can also occur from the too much of this.
True.
Too many boundaries, too tight. So we're both coming at this from a place of, I want to give my kid as much autonomy as possible. I want to move into non-coercive parenting as much as possible while prioritizing the relationship. And so I think that that's an important note to have in here.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing that in. I think that speaks to like the fear that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
wonder
that
how
there
it
was
could be applied from somebody who's not afraid of that.
I know, I was going to say the
and who's
opposite.
more afraid of being so
Power
permissive.
under.
Yeah. Really curious about that. So if that's anybody who's listened, I'd love to get a conversation going. I also want to call out, please follow us on Substack if you're into it. I would love to get people at Substack because I feel like our potential to grow our community, I feel like that's a really great place to host a community kind of space. So if you haven't already, go to the Substack link, follow us there. That would be great.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Hey, we know time is hard to come by. Thanks for spending some of yours with us. And remember, you can always reach out. We're real people and we're interested in what's real for you too. Do you have questions or feedback? Anything you'd like to hear a chat on? Check the show notes for where to find us.